What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Enjoying the Review. I'm your host, Incomparable Zach Jones, and today I'm going to be reviewing and recapping Daredevil Born Again, Episode 4, entitled Sic Semper Systema. Before I get into it, guys, I want to remind everybody to please subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can leave comments, likes, positive reviews, all that good stuff. You can also listen in audio form on all major podcast services. And if you like, you can follow me on social media on Twitter at Zach Jones Live. That's ZachJonesLive. Or now I have changed my handle on Blue Sky. If you want to follow me on Blue Sky, at Enjoying the Review. So there you go. All right, guys, let's get into it. So I got to say, another week of Daredevil. And I'm proud to say, or happy to say, another episode I really enjoyed. Now, I don't think I'm going to rate this one quite as high as last week's episode, but I think I did like it better than the 2-episode premiere. So I think I would probably give this like a 7.4 out of 10. I thought it was pretty solid. And I gotta say, my favorite part, I mean, I guess I'll put out an early spoiler alert, although, I mean, this is in the thumbnail on Disney Plus of the show, so I don't think it's any big secret that, Frank Castle makes his appearance in this episode. And I gotta say, my favorite scene of this episode was the back and forth between Matt Murdock and Frank Castle. Even though they were ostensibly going over the same conversation they always go over, which is, I think we need to kill bad guys. Well, I think it's bad to kill bad guys. It's kind of their same conflict as always, but they do it so well. It's really well written. And then, John Bernthal, man, he's just perfect casting for the Punisher. He just, it's great stuff. And, Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock, also perfect casting, is just great stuff here. I will say I'm interested to see Frank Castle as in action as the Punisher, because, my one big criticism so far of this series was that fight scene that started things off in episode 1 that I thought was pretty bad. You would kind of have to think that, Frank in action wouldn't be as kind of stylized as Daredevil. So, fingers crossed it would look better. But I am interested to see it. We also get a lot of play between Wilson Fisk and Vanessa in this episode. And I think they also do a good job, and we're kind of seeing that relationship, put through its paces and everything. And both really solid actors, good stuff there. What else? We get our first kind of glimpse at the villain Muse, who's going to be a bigger villain going forward. So it'll be interesting to see how he pans out. Even though she doesn't play a big role in this episode, we do get some more like BB Urich stuff, and so that's not super interesting, but I am kind of interested to see where they go with her. Because again, I think Ben Urich, I've said this before, was a great character in season 1 of Daredevil, and I was kind of bummed they killed him off as quickly as they did in the Netflix series. But yeah, I think those are the wide kind of strokes of this episode. The only other thing I'll say is, again, whichever side of the political spectrum you're on, every episode it's more and more clear that they are using the character of Wilson Fisk to comment on Donald Trump, and very one-to-one comparisons happen in this episode as well. So very interesting from that side of things. But guys, should we get into the details? Let's get into the recap of the episode. So, of course, the big shock at the end of episode 3 was the murder of the White Tiger character. So we pick up with, the guy that's doing the autopsy on White Tiger. puts his belongings together in a bag, the white tiger like medallion and the suit. And he's visiting with Matt, and he tells Matt that no shell casing was found at the scene of the crime, and that the killer may have used a custom-made ammunition. So Hector's niece Angela shows up and wants to see Hector's body. I guess this is something I should have also noted was kind of a takeaway from this episode is I have to imagine they are definitely setting her up to be the future White Tiger. Just another, Young Avengers type character, which I feel like by the time they get a Young Avengers like show off the ground, some of these other like people they've set up to be quote unquote Young Avengers are going to be like in their late 20s, early 30s. Like it's taken them so long to get, that show in production. And it seems like they've been like, well, ever since really the, Disney Plus shows have started, they've been seeding Young Avenger type characters. And it's just like, when are they going to finally get it together and pull the trigger? And now that it just seems like they're adding more and more. Again, they haven't explicitly said she's going to become White Tiger, but I believe in the comics, that's what happened. And there was even one of those Spider-Man animated shows, one that wasn't very good, with like Drake Bell as the voice of Spider-Man. I know the female version of White Tiger was in that show. Anyway, Matt tells her that it's better that she does not see Hector now, and that she just, remember him as is, and without his head blown up. I thought this actress they got for Angela did a good job. I like this scene. She suspects that the police killed her uncle Hector, and she tells Matt that she hates the police and that no one is ever going to do anything about her uncle. She just has a sense of hopelessness, really. But Matt tells her that she has to believe that someone will find his killer. And, I really think this is going to be the impetus for Matt to, eventually become Daredevil again. So we get a quick glimpse of Muse, who is wearing a mask, and he's carrying a body down the subway tracks. And later on in the episode, we'll get another quick glimpse of him. But so I imagine, next episode is going to have to be kind of our big introduction to Muse. We'll probably see what he does to this guy's body. Matt investigating it probably in some way or fashion. You have to imagine. So now we get a scene where BB Urick is partying at a bar with Daniel Blake, who is kind of this sycophant campaign manager. Well, not manager, but he's one of the guys that works for Fisk. And, they've had kind of a relationship. But my thing is like, BB should kind of feel, I feel like after last episode, BB Urick should feel like she was kind of used by Wilson Fisk. But you don't really get a sense of that here. And then like now after what happens in this episode, like, Daniel Blake character, shouldn't really want to be with her anymore because she kind of like, screws him over. But we'll have to see where their relationship goes. I'm not super invested in that character. By the way, I'm pretty sure his last name's Blake. His name's Daniel Blake, I believe, which is weird just because like, Donald Blake is like the, in the comics, like the doctor that Thor like takes over or whatever, and then he can like tap the stick and become Thor. It was a whole thing. I was like, I thought it was weird that they used such a similar name. Anyway, he lets it slip that Fisk met with some new tech company that's like have some new ideas about recycling in the city. Also, like, we'll get many shots of like garbage piled up in the streets, kind of like there's. It seems like there's maybe a governmental problem where the garbage isn't getting picked up. And he very briefly mentions that Fisk would have a way of working around the unions if he hires this tech company. So maybe the thing is like he hires a private like garbage company so that he doesn't have to worry about unions as he would if he used like city employees or something like that. Again, this kind of stuff is like the trade politics in Star Wars, like the prequels, where you're like, I'm not sure I care about this stuff, but I guess it's fine. It gets us where we need to go. We see outside the bar that there's graffiti on the wall of like the white tiger mask with angel wings coming out of it. And you have to wonder, I kind of think they're setting up like the Muse character to be like the person that does a lot of this graffiti art. But then I'm like, what's the politics of that character? Because like we've seen like Punisher graffiti, now we see White Tiger graffiti. So maybe he has a thing for vigilantes. I'm not sure exactly. Anyway, BB keeps trying to get Daniel to party longer, but he's like, no, I gotta like work tomorrow or whatever, so he can't party anymore, and he leaves. We get the scene of the cops arresting a black man who, and I just wrote, seemingly steal his fiddle faddle, because I was taking notes as I went, and we'll find out later like what that's all about, but it's a little weird. Although I gotta say, when I did see that scene, the marketing work, I was like, you know what I haven't had in a while? Some good old fiddle faddle. It sounds kind of good. Okay, so now we get a scene where Kirsten calls Matt and tells him that she needs him downtown. He has a quick bit of dialogue where he mentions like he's gonna have to meet with like some banks because like they're not a big firm, and so they have to get loans and funding on their own or whatever. And she says he needs to meet with bad Leroy Bradford. Doesn't have quite the same ring. But there's somebody at the city docket they owe a favor to, and so they're doing this one as a freebie, apparently. So now we switch over to Fisk and Vanessa. They're in another therapy meeting with Heather. And she wants them to talk about Vanessa's affair with Adam. Fisk says that it was a betrayal, but Vanessa says, he left without a word, didn't say if he would come back, and, so she considers that a betrayal. And Vanessa says she was attracted to this Adam guy's hands because he's an artist, and she was like attracted to the art that he could make and the drawings he can make. And she also says she was attracted to him because he was not a part of Fisk's world. And Heather's like, you mean politics? And they're both like business. And she's like, okay. Vanessa reveals that she apparently has abandonment issues because her father would leave for long periods at a time. And so this triggered her when Fisk left. I think Heather asked Fisk if he, confronted Adam, and he says yes. And he says they had a, quote, clarifying dialogue. But he says it was just a conversation and things never got violent. But we'll see the fate of poor Adam later on in the episode. And, I predicted last episode. I mean, we all knew something bad was happening to Adam, so it's not a real bold prediction. But, yeah, I figured something was happening with him. Especially since Fisk's knuckles are always bloody. Although we don't actually see him, punch Adam or anything in this episode. And they both say they don't know where Adam is now. Of course, we find out that is indeed a lie on Fisk's part. Heather tells him that the only way to preserve their marriage is to forgive each other, and that forgiveness is like the highest form of love. As they're leaving, Heather asks to speak to Vanessa alone, and she asks her if she feels safe in her relationship with Wilson. And Vanessa says that Fisk is capable of a lot of things, but harming her is not one of them. So she trusts him in that regard. We get another quick BB Uric news report where there's a man who expresses his admiration for vigilantes. So I always do kind of hate like when there's like comic book stuff where like almost like basically all the populace is against vigilantes, because I am like, there'd be some who would have been personally affected by vigilantes in a positive way. There's always got to be a few people that are pro vigilante. So Matt has his meeting with bad Leroy Bradford, and I gotta say they want us to feel sorry for this guy, and they eventually kind of get us there, but he does seem like a jerk. Like he's not a good dude. But they do, I think, a good job of eventually making us kind of see his point. So this guy was caught stealing fiddle faddle, it turns out. And, Matt's basically telling him, like, hey, they got you on camera, blatantly stealing it. And he has these, like, very weak, lies. He's like, well, I paid for that a week ago, like he paid in advance or something. And then he's like, there was kind of a funny line where he asked, could it have been a scroll? And Matt's just like, no. Anyway, Matt tries to convince him to take a plea deal, but he doesn't want to do that. He tells Matt to go and get him a probation deal so that he doesn't have to do any time in jail. And even though Matt's already told him, look, your rap sheet is super long. There's no way they're going to give you probation. But he's like, no, go get me a probation deal. Anyway, Matt goes to this lady that works at this place and negotiates with her. And he basically sweet talks her. So I kind of like this scene. He's, kind of flirting with her. And he gets it from like a 30-day stint in jail down to under 10. And like with good behavior, he'll be out in like 6 or 7 days. So like less than a week. But of course he can't. He tries to get probation, but he can't get that. As Matt's in the hallway, he hears Officer Powell talking. And so Matt confronts him and basically insinuates, accuses him of killing Hector. Powell pushes Matt against a wall and denies killing Hector. And at least what I got out of this scene is Matt is listening to his heartbeat, and it seems steady. So I think we're, to believe that he's indeed telling the truth. He was not the one who killed Hector. But Powell then makes a threat to Matt, and Matt says, "Well, you better bring more guys than you did last time." Of course, he beat up Powell and a friend of his at the end of episode 2. I mean, yeah. So Fisk reveals a plan to his campaign managers to turn a Red Hook port that's like in a really bad state basically into some sort of center for industry. And Sheila, like the female campaign manager, is telling him like, it's going to be very hard to do that. And she's like, there was literally like, a murder committed 50 feet from here a couple days ago or whatever. Like the gang activity is terrible. It's going to be really hard to get this done. It would take forever. And she's like, it's a worthy goal, but then she kind of walks him through like all the red tape it would take. Like, you got to get this guy to put it on the agenda so the county board or the city board can possibly approve a impact study on it, and they'll have to do the impact study, and that'll take forever, this kind of stuff. But Fisk is like, okay, fine, do the first step, give it to the guy to try to get it up for vote or whatever, So Sheila and Daniel walk off, and then Buck tells Fisk that the gang violence, Sheila was right about one thing. The gang violence is going to be an impediment to your plan here until one of them are sentenced or they all die. And Fisk took note of that. And so I wonder, what I would like to see here is Fisk finds a clever way of kind of pitting the Punisher against the gangs in this area, to use the Punisher for his means. And then Daredevil discovers that Fisk is doing that. And so he's got to, try to get Frank not to wipe out all the gang members or something along those lines. That I would like to see, and it would make sense. But probably not the case. But hey, that's my 2 cents I'm going to throw in there. We get another scene with Leroy and Matt. So Leroy is upset, even though Matt got him less than 10 days in jail, because he's like, hey, the last time this happened, I wasn't able to do what I need to do to keep my SSI payment coming in, and that's going to happen here again, and it's going to screw it all up. And he says that the cops would rather spend 50 times what it would take to feed him to keep him in jail. And I like that line, because there is a truth to it. And that's what I was saying. Like, eventually I said he'll say some stuff that kind of makes sense and does kind of get him on our side, even though he is kind of a jerk. And I thought, he made some good points here and Matt even kind of acknowledged, he's like, I think he says something like, you're right, So Fisk, okay, this scene here. So Fisk goes to a grade school, and the kids sing "We Built This City on Rock and Roll" to him. Now, here's the thing. I like this scene, and it's a good gag, and they reuse it in a way later on. And I'm like, it's a good gag, but I cannot imagine this ever happening. I would love to believe that there are cool teachers out there teaching their grade school kids to sing "We Built This City on Rock and Roll." I just don't think it's happening. By the way, for those of you old like me, to remember VH1, once did a show that was a countdown of 100 worst songs of all time. And maybe I'm misremembering, but "We Built This City on Rock and Roll" was on the list. And not only was it on the list, I think they gave it the #1 spot, the worst song of all time. And I just want to say, VH1, you done got it wrong. "We Built This City on Rock and Roll" is a straight up banger. You know it. I know it. Everybody knows it. And it was a miscarriage of justice. In fact, I don't even know if VH1 is still a thing. I haven't had regular cable in so long. But if it is, I think they should have to redo that show. And let's be honest, music these days is so bad that "We Built This City on Rock and Roll" should not even be able to come in anywhere on the top 100 worst songs list, even amongst people that don't like it. There's so many worse songs than that song. So, I just want to give, props to "We Built This City on Rock and Roll" and Starship. Because it's a jam, guys. It just is. I don't think this is realistic, but please, grade school music teachers, teach your kids to sing that song, please. Also, like the gag is like Wilson's like has to pretend that he likes hearing it, even though he hates it. Anyway, while the kids are singing, Daniel and Sheila have a conversation, and it turns out BB wrote a news article about how Wilson Fisk was planning on basically being a union buster, going with this new technology company, to get around using union labor. So Sheila tells Daniel to call the schedulers and have the plan taken off the schedule. She tells him that she will handle it and that he just needs to keep his mouth shut. And I think he basically tells her that he unwittingly leaked it. He's the one. Anyway, they take Fisk to a Latvian cultural center. So a little Easter egg for all you Doctor Doom lovers. Latveria is a country in the MCU, and it is referenced here. Although I think there might have been like a slight reference to it in Moon Knight. I can't remember. I think there might have been. So they take him to that cultural center and they tell him about the article and how there was a leak. Of course, he's very angry about that and he wants to call a meeting right then. But Sheila's like, no, you got to do your speech here. This is politics. And so then, to continue the bit, the Latvians also sing "We Built This City on Rock and Roll" in their language, which again, an amusing bit, but a little, impossible to believe. But I liked it. And hey, even in that language, still a banger. Great song. I gotta say, Starship is having kind of a renaissance because in the MCU, somebody at Marvel likes them because not only are they using this song here, the latest Thunderbolts trailer used "What Is It Never Gonna Stop Us Now," which actually is the better song, but both bangers. But yeah, I think there must be somebody at Marvel that's a Starship fan. Yeah. So back at Wilson's, the mayor's office, he yells at his staff and tells them that he will find out whoever leaked the story. But Daniel admits to it. So he's like, okay, clear the room. Just you and me, Daniel. I'm going to yell at you. But Sheila's like, tells Fisk that it wasn't Daniel's fault. And so he's like, okay, you can be in trouble too, basically. So Daniel deeply apologizes and said he understands if Fisk fires him, but says he will always be loyal to him and vote for him forever. So Fisk finds his loyalty appealing and lets him keep the job, but tells him that if he screws up again, it will be the last thing he ever does. Again, I said the comparisons to Trump are pretty blatant. There's been infinite reports that Trump, and you can see it, he loves loyalists. He loves people. Flattery will get you everywhere. And he surrounds himself with loyalists and yes men. He loves that kind of thing. So, I mean, even if you're a Trump fan, I think it's undeniable that that's a part of his personality. So we get another quick glimpse of like that graffiti with the white tiger mask, but we also see like graffiti that says Muse. So that's what I'm saying. I'm guessing since his name is signed there, like he is responsible for the majority of this graffiti that we're seeing. We get another BB report where a woman says that Fisk, she's like, Fisk is caught up in a scandal every single week, and how are we supposed to trust someone like that? Again, Whether you're a Trump person or not, you can't deny he's caught up in a scandal every single week. And so, a 1-to-1 comparison. So Matt goes to the scene of Hector's death, and he ends up finding the missing shell casing in a drainage ditch. Now, I gotta say, maybe I zoned out here a bit, but like he ends up walking to where Frank Castle is, and I was like, I don't know if he had a clue of getting there or if he just already knew where Frank was. Maybe I missed something there, but anyway, he takes a walk and he ends up finding Frank's like hideout. So the reason he tracked down Frank is because he found the Punisher symbol on the bullet casing. And Frank kind of scoffs at the idea that there's these, fanboys out there, wearing his symbol. And, Matt basically insinuates that, he's partly responsible. He's like, oh, yeah, you had nothing to do with that. The fact that these people are running around carrying out violence. They got the Punisher symbol. He's like, a lot of them are cops. But, Frank's basically like, hey, not my fault. Matt tells him that he could be using this stuff he has as a service to the people and saving lives. And, Frank says, I did that once, I was in the military. And he's like, look where that got me. And Matt says, oh, so you're the victim in this, which, angers Frank. And he's like, don't call me that. I would never call myself that. I never have, never will. Frank tells Matt that the real reason he came there was to get his permission to hurt someone. Matt tells him that he is wrong, and he begins to leave. But while he's leaving, Frank confronts him about Foggy. This pisses Matt off, and he punches him. But he punches Frank, but then he immediately apologizes. And Frank's like, "Don't apologize. That's the one honest thing you've done since you've been here," which I like that line. Matt says it isn't about Foggy, and Frank says it's all about him. Frank says, I like this line too. Frank says that he still hears his little boy saying, "Get him, Daddy. Get him all," or whatever. And I like that line because that shows Frank's delusion. Frank convinces himself that this is what his family, what his son would have wanted, to drive him to be the Punisher. And I just like that line because it really encapsulates Frank. Of course, I'm sure it's not the case that his family would want this life for him, but he convinces himself, that's what his son would be telling him. And he says he actually hears it, Frank tells Matt that it's going to keep eating at him if he just continues to do nothing. And Matt tells him, hey, I got the guy, Bullseye, and I let the system handle it. And Frank basically tells him, the system is BS. Matt tells Frank that Bullseye got life. And Frank asks if Foggy got life. Again, a good line. I liked how he turned it around on him. And Matt basically tells Frank that Foggy was the most decent man he ever met, and like they could both live a lifetime and never like measure up to who Foggy was. And then he ends up leaving. Another scene with Vanessa and Fisk. She tells Fisk that she told Heather that she feels safe with him and that she wasn't lying. Fisk said he learned a lot of things from his father, who in the Netflix show, we find out that Fisk ended up killing his father, and his father was like, a pretty bad guy. But he basically says, "Hey, I learned a lot of things from my father, but forgiveness was not one of them. But I'm trying to change." Vanessa tells him that she is not the same woman that she was before he left, and he's basically like, "You're right. You're even more extraordinary." I do get the feeling that eventually something pretty bad is going to happen to Vanessa. I don't know if she dies or, you know, just something bad, but I kind of feel like eventually something bad will happen to her. Or maybe they'll maybe they'll go the other way where like they eventually kill off Fisk and she becomes the queen pin or something like that. I guess I could see them going either way. So Matt comes home to Heather. So, their relationship is progressing. She's staying at his place now. Maybe not full time, but, sometimes. And she says she was worried about him because he came in late. And he basically tells her, about his day and like the stuff with Leroy and all that. And then they make sweet, sweet love. At least that's what the implication is. And then Matt, he's wide awake at night. He can't sleep. So he gets up, he goes to the roof of his building, and we find out on the roof of his building, that's where he hides all the Daredevil gear, including way more Daredevil helmets than he would ever need, including the far inferior yellow version that, of course, he wore in the She-Hulk series. But then he gets out his, staff, and he starts practicing the old martial arts. By the way, what do you call his bow staff? Because it it has a detachable rope hook. I don't know if it has like a specific name. His weapon. But as he's practicing, they kind of intertwine that with Wilson Fisk. Goes downstairs. He has some gross meal prepared. He starts eating it, and then a guy starts screaming, and we find out that indeed he is holding Adam prisoner. Um, so, like I referenced earlier, he lied about not knowing where Adam was. He indeed knows where he is. And then finally, end of the episode, we get just another quick tidbit of Muse. Muse's victim wakes up and finds that Muse is taking out his blood. Now, I did read the Charles Soule run on the comics where Muse was like a villain, but I gotta be honest, that run was fine, but not very memorable. I don't really remember what Muse's gimmick is. I think he kind of makes like art exhibits out of the dead bodies, so we'll probably see that in the next episode, I would imagine. But like I can't remember like his motivation for doing so was, or anything like that. But again, a pretty solid episode. I really enjoyed the Frank and Matt dialogue, probably the highlight of the episode for me. But guys, what do you think? What was your favorite part of the episode? What are you looking forward to next episode and going into the future? Please comment down below and let me know. But as always, guys, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Like, comment, positive reviews. You can listen in audio form on your podcast catcher of choice. You can follow me on Twitter at Zach Jones Live, ZachJonesLive, or now on Blue Sky at Enjoying the Review. But guys, until next time, I hope you're enjoying the review. Bye, guys.